Better picks, better vibes, better MMA. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming back at you with UFC 304 picks, predictions, and breakdown for every single fight on the card. We are going to waste no time and jump right into the main event. Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad. Of course, this is a rematch between the two. I think this is going to be quite a competitive fight. Belal Muhammad is a good wrestler. He has improved boxing and some very good cardio, and I think he'll most likely take down Leon Edwards 2 to 3 times in this fight and win at least 1 to 2 rounds. That all being said, though, I believe Leon Edwards is a faster striker and has more variation in his kicks and his strikes. He also has some very good defensive wrestling, and he is 4 years younger than Belal Muhammad. I think Belal Muhammad has a very good kick to the body, which he implemented in their first fight, which I'm sure he will use again. But Leon Edwards, I think, has too many overwhelming weapons that for as long as this fight stays on the feet, Leon Edwards will be outpointing and be the more aggressive striker of the two. Leon also has a slight reach advantage over Belal Muhammad, and I think more than anything, he has something to prove in this matchup. There are many people that are already expecting this to be a very, very boring fight, but I think the wrestling threat of Belal Muhammad and his successful takedowns, which I think he will get, will make this a very entertaining fight, and it will press Leon Edwards to be more aggressive on the feet. So I'm going to go with Leon Edwards winning a decision or getting a 4th round TKO. Moving on to Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blaydes. Now, Curtis Blaydes is probably the best pure heavyweight wrestler we have in the division right now, and he is an improved boxer from what we've seen of him once he came into the UFC. He definitely has improved his hands. He's powerful, and he has a slight reach advantage over Tom Aspinall in this matchup. But as we know from Curtis Blaydes, you could look at every single one of his professional losses. It is only to the most high-level competition in the heavyweight division, and it all comes by way of knockout. He's been knocked out twice by Francis Ngannou. Of course, he was knocked out again by Derek Lewis, and then most recently, he was knocked out by Sergey Pavlovich. Tom Aspinall, of course, has a win already over Sergey Pavlovich, and I personally believe that Tom Aspinall is the fastest heavyweight we've ever seen since Cain Velasquez. It's very unique to see such a big guy, Tom Aspinall's size, be as fast as he is. And on top of all of that, he has a talented submission game, and he is slightly bigger than Curtis Blaydes. So I'm going to be picking Tom Aspinall to get this done either by a 1st round or 2nd round TKO. Most likely it will be a 1st round KO, but this is a very live fight. The way that Curtis Blaydes will win this fight, if he does win it, is if he is throwing that beautiful 1-2 that Curtis Blaydes throws, and when Tom Aspinall slips his jab, once his head returns back to the center line from slipping the jab, that 2 from Curtis Blaydes needs to connect flush. Curtis Blaydes' only real way of winning this is either by clipping Tom Aspinall with the 1-2 or hitting Tom Aspinall with Travis Brown elbows like he did to Jailton Almeida in his last fight. The odds of Curtis Blaydes replicating the same finish in 2 consecutive fights, the odds of that must be over 1 million. So I've got to say that Tom Aspinall has much greater chances of knocking out Curtis Blaydes here. So I'm going to go with Tom Aspinall getting the finish in the 1st or 2nd round. Moving on to Bobby Green versus Paddy Pimblett. If this fight goes to a decision, I would pick Bobby Green to win the decision. If Paddy Pimblett makes the stupid decision to stand and have a kickboxing boxing match with Bobby Green, then Bobby Green will most likely outpoint him. However, Paddy Pimblett is much more athletic than Bobby Green as of right now in their careers. He's much more aggressive in terms of his striking and his grappling, and he is the better overall grappler. I know that Bobby Green has a wrestling base, and he does have a submission bag in his own right, and I'm sure he can defend a submission to some extent. Paddy Pimblett, on the other hand, is just another level when it comes to setting up his submissions, and I'm sure once he gets the back of Bobby Green, or if he gets a dominant position, he will be able to set up submissions on Bobby Green and get him him out of there. So I'm going to pick Paddy Pimblett by a first or second round club and sub. I haven't liked the way Bobby Green's chin has been holding up in his recent fights. Even against Jim Miller, when Jim Miller would land a solid shot, it would put Bobby Green on wobbly legs, and that's something that we haven't seen from Bobby Green in the past. So I think somebody who is very, very aggressive and likes to throw a lot of dangerous head kicks or big winging hooks or some flying techniques like Paddy Pimblett, I think he'll be able to crack Bobby, knock him down, and then get the rear naked choke in the first or second round. Moving on to Christian Leroy Duncan versus Gregory Rodriguez. Now, Christian Leroy Duncan is a very good kicker, but what he lacks mainly in his striking arsenal are the boxing combinations and just having some solid boxing fundamentals, but that is something that he's been working on in his past few fights, particularly his Tululan fight. Now, going up against somebody like Gregory Rodriguez, who is a very hard power puncher with some basic boxing, I think it's a good challenge for Christian Duncan because he has some very good head movement, and thus far in his UFC career, he hasn't been hit with many solid punches. Even in his first loss to Armen Petrosyan, it was mainly due to the fact that Armen Petrosyan was able to chop at the legs and kick the body of Christian Leroy Duncan. That really broke his base throughout the fight and gave Petrosyan the ability to build momentum and to stop the momentum of Christian Leroy Duncan. Gregory Rodriguez, on the other hand, is a much more basic striker, and often his only real use of defense on the feet is using a high guard, and I think that really opens up a lot of the kicking attacks to the legs that Christian Leroy Duncan likes to use in his fights. And Gregory Rodriguez is a world-class grappler and has some very, very nasty elbows, so Gregory Rodriguez needs to make it imperative to close the distance early and to get the takedown. If he's able to do so, I could see him finishing Christian Leroy Duncan on the ground, but if it stays on the feet for 3 rounds, Christian Leroy Duncan will absolutely outclass Gregory Rodriguez on the feet and will get a 3-round decision. Moving on to Arnold Allen versus Giga Chikadze. Giga Chikadze, as we know, has some very good kicks, but does not have the fastest or the best boxing combinations, and I think that's an area where Arnold Allen will seriously overpower him in this matchup, as we've seen in Arnold Allen's fights with Sadiq Youssef and Dan Hooker. Once he really lets his hands go and starts flurrying punches, it's very hard to stop him, and it's very dangerous when you're standing in front of him. I also think that Arnold Allen will have a very big advantage when it comes to the elbows in the clinch, as we saw in Giga Chikadze's fight with Calvin Kattar. That gave him a massive problem. So I think Giga Chikadze is yet to cover up that hole in his game, and Arnold Allen should also have a massive grappling advantage in this fight. So if Arnold Allen gets into any trouble on the feet, or if he simply wants to make the fight easier for himself, I could see Arnold Allen taking this to the ground and getting a submission. I think this is going to be a club and sub for Arnold Allen, either in the first or second round. I could see him feeling out the kicks of Giga Chikadze at range for the first few minutes, then moving in and closing the distance, clipping Giga Chikadze, taking the fight to the ground, and getting the rear naked choke. So I'm going to go with Arnold Allen by a submission in the first round or a decision. Moving on to Muhammad Mokaev versus Manel Kape. As we know, Muhammad Mokaev will look to take this fight to the ground and will look to grapple. I think he will most likely win the first round, but Muhammad Mokaev's maturity concerns me as the fight goes on. Most notably, he is not able to hold positions for as long as he does in the first round, in the second and third round. As we saw in the Alex Perez fight, he simply is not able to keep up the cardio or the strength for the whole 15 minutes. I think somebody like Manel Kape, who has worked at gyms like American Kickboxing Academy and has worked with many other wrestlers in preparation for this fight, I think Manel Kape will be looking to deal with the wrestling scrambles from Muhammad Mokaev. Manel Kape has a massive speed advantage in the striking. He likes to throw flying knees up the middle. He likes to throw uppercuts as well. Those are some very, very dangerous shots for Mokaev to look out for in the second and third round once he starts getting tired and shooting for these desperation shots. So I'm going to go with Manel Kape getting a third round KO TKO over Muhammad Mokaev. Moving on to Nathaniel Wood versus Daniel Pineda. Daniel Pineda, as we know, is a steroid cheat, and because of this, he is a very, very aggressive fighter, but it's almost to his detriment at moments. Nathaniel Wood is a very good in and out striker, so I think the aggressiveness of Pineda will play into the game plan of Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel Wood is also 8 years younger. He is faster on the feet than Daniel Pineda. He is hungrier, given that this is in his hometown, in his home arena. He's beaten the likes of Andre Feely and Charles Jourdain. Daniel Pineda has also been knocked out by Cub Swanson, and I think Nathaniel Wood poses a very similar threat on the feet in terms of the in and out movement that really messed up Daniel Pineda in that Cub Swanson fight. So I'm going to go with Nathaniel Wood here, getting a first round KO. Moving on to Kalen Loughran versus Jake Hadley. Now, Loughran and Hadley are both forward pressure fighters, and Kalen Loughran is the bigger and stronger of the two. So I'm looking for him to really bully and outmuscle Jake Hadley in this fight. Unfortunately, though, Kalen Loughran has no head movement. So in this case, I really want to pick Jake Hadley to throw a very big overhand right as Kalen Loughran is backing him down and crack Kalen Loughran and knock him out. If Jake Hadley wants to throw that big overhand right while Kalen Loughran is walking into him, it's going to be there for him all night. My concern for Jake Hadley, though, is the fact that he simply shows no volume when he is put on the back foot, and this was evidenced in his Charles Johnson fight. I'm going to have to pick Kalen Loughran to win it by a decision, simply by the fact that Jake Hadley is taking this on such short notice, and it's not in an ideal weight class for him. I think he's going to be outmuscled by Kalen Loughran, and I don't think Jake Hadley has the best cardio in general, so I'm expecting it to be a smidge bit worse, if anything, since he's taking it on such short notice. So we're going to go with Kalen Loughran by decision. Moving on to Mick Parkin versus Brzeski. Parkin is 4 years younger than Brzeski and is very good at slowing down the pace of the fight and keeping things on his terms. Mick Parkin is a very good, solid, well-rounded heavyweight prospect, both on the feet and on the ground. Brzeski has lost to the likes of Carl Williams and Waldo Cortez Acosta, and I think Mick Parkin is right around that level at heavyweight, so I'm expecting Parkin to get the win over here on Brzeski, but it will be a very boring 3-round decision. Moving on to Oban Elliott versus Preston Parsons. This fight has the potential to be quite exciting because Oban Elliott is quite aggressive. He has some very terrible footwork, and he is quite slow when he is throwing some of his strikes. Parsons, on the other hand, is a tested American regional prospect. He fought Mike Perry close to 10 years ago, and he also beat Ignacio Bahamondes on the regional scene. He's been fighting talented competition ever since he's turned professional. I also think Preston Parsons is going to be the stronger grappler once this gets to the ground, and Preston Parsons has a very good, strong, straight right hand, which Oban Elliott is very open to because Oban Elliott does not have good striking defense whatsoever. So I'm hoping that this fight gets finished by Preston Parsons, but I'm going to go with Preston Parsons winning via 3-round decision. Moving on to Sam Patterson versus Kiefer Crosby. Now, this is the most fun pick of the night for me. Sam Patterson is a massive favorite over Kiefer Crosby, and I really feel like it is undeservingly so. Both of these fighters have showed gaping holes in their game. Patterson is a submission specialist because he has some very, very long limbs, but he does get touched up on the feet, and this was evidenced in his Yanal Ashmouz fight. I've also noticed this in his regional fights. He does not have good head movement, and he is very lackadaisical with his hands on the feet. He does not keep his hands up. So it is very easy to touch Sam Patterson. Crosby swings for the fences and throws very, very heavy shots, but he lacks awareness on the ground and can be submitted by Sam Patterson if this gets to the ground. But that if is a very big if, simply by the fact that Sam Patterson has not displayed any sort of good wrestling. If you watch Kiefer Crosby on the regional scene against Alex Oliveira, he does a great job of moving in and out and pouncing on his opponents and throwing those big winging shots. I think he'll be able to catch Sam Patterson off guard, and I think he'll be able to crack pencil neck Patterson and be able to knock him out in the first round. Sam Patterson is much too big of a favorite for this fight, and it's too unjustified to not pick Kiefer Crosby. So I'm going to have to go with Kiefer Crosby getting the first round knockout. Moving on to Modestas Bukauskas versus Marcin Prachnio. Now, Modestas Bukauskas is 6 years younger than Prachnio. Prachnio is a higher volume karate style fighter, but I think that high volume is going to play into the countering of Modestas Bukauskas. Modestas really does like to counter in combination, and I'm also expecting Modestas to be the faster fighter of the two, and he is very hungry to make a comeback after losing to Vitor Petrino. He is the comeback king. He is a two-time Cage Warriors champion, so he's very, very familiar with the English crowd. He's looking to defend home soil for them. So I think Modestas is extremely motivated going into this fight, so I'm going to pick him by a 3-round decision here. My locks of the card are Nathaniel Wood, Mick Parkin, and Preston Parsons. I hope you guys liked the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Bettrmma, you know what we do. We out. Peace.